Wabarakatuh, my beloved brothers and sisters. Welcome back to another episode of our Embrace Weekly Friday Reminder. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, I have once again been given the opportunity to lead today's discussion. And so today's Friday Reminder is going to be, inshallah, short and sweet. I plan not to speak more than maybe 10, 15 minutes tops. And today's discussion is going to be the meaning of having tawakkul of Allah, the meaning of having complete trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the term tawakkul is a term that many of us are familiar with, a term that we have heard many times in hadith, in the Quran, in probably various different scholarly lectures and reminders at our masajid and our Islamic gatherings. And so today I kind of wanted to focus the discussion on what exactly the word tawakkul means and what it really means to have this tawakkul of Allah, this complete and utter trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's important for us to understand that when we say we have trust in Allah, it is not the same type of trust that we would put into another person, to put trust in another individual. And inshallah ta'ala, in today's brief discussion, we'll go over why exactly that is. So first and foremost, where does the word tawakkul come from? So the root word for tawakkul is wakala, which means to put someone in a position of authority, to get to basically put your trust in someone in having a particular responsibility, usually having a responsibility over your affairs. So putting your trust in someone. So for example, we know that one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names is Al-Wakil, which means the guardian. And when someone is a wakil over another person, they are responsible for that person. They have that person's best interest in mind, and they're in a position to ensure that that person whom they've been given wakil of, given responsibility over, that their best interests are prioritized. And so this is where the word tawakkul comes from, to have complete and utter trust in an individual and have that trust be that they are in a position of responsibility to ensure that your best affairs are put in the forefront, that your best interests are prioritized. And so when we say we have tawakkul of Allah, we are saying that we have complete trust that whatever Allah has in mind for us, it is going to be within our best interest. But this is where we need to kind of delve into what it truly means to have complete and utter trust in Allah. Because there are many times where we say we have trust in Allah, we trust that whatever Allah has planned for us is going to be within our best interest. But are we actually visualizing that when we say we have tawakkul of Allah? Or do we actually understand what it means to put our faith and our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because when you put your trust in another person, for example, like your mother or your father or your boss or your sibling, or even someone who may be given a power of attorney over another person, we put our trust in them. But if things don't go the way that we want them to go with that person has made a decision or has done something that we feel is not within our best interests, we lose that trust based off of the consequence of that action. If they did something that we feel is not our most ideal outcome, then we lose that trust in that person. That trust can be taken away. This is not the same when it comes to having tawakkul of Allah, to having complete and utter trust in Allah. What that means is, essentially, when we have complete and utter trust in Allah, that trust does not go away. That trust does not diminish, even when things go a certain way that we perhaps may have not wanted them to. So I always think a good example of kind of illustrating what tawakkul means is looking at a particular hadith and a particular verse of the Quran, which inshallah ta'ala we'll go over real quick. So in a hadith, The Prophet ﷺ said, he's in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is speaking about the difference between a strong believer and a weak believer. And in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that both believers are good, but the strong believer is essentially the one to where if something that's perceived bad comes their way, or some type of harm that they perceive as harmful comes their way, they do not say, if so and so didn't happen, or if this did not happen, then this wouldn't happen. If I had done this, then this would not have happened. If this didn't happen, if it wasn't for this, then this would not have happened. Instead, they put their complete trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that those who are strong believers, have strong belief and trust in Allah, when something happens to them, they do not say, ugh, if only I didn't do this, or if only that didn't happen, then this would not have come to me. Because they realize and understand that when it comes to the consequences of what happens around us, that is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has complete and utter control over. And that nothing in this world can happen unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permits it to happen. Now, it's important to us to clarify this does not mean that we do not learn from our mistakes, that if we do something wrong and then we suffer from the consequences of that action, we do not say, well, it only happened because Allah has allowed it to happen. No, Allah has given us intellect. He's given us aql, and he even tells us, we should learn from our mistakes. And perhaps that consequence was due for as an opportunity for us to learn from our mistakes. So it's important for us not to get that mixed up or have a misunderstanding of what it means when we say having tawakkul of Allah. But it means that when something bad comes our way, despite perhaps our best efforts, we do not look back. We do not grieve upon what has happened and say, if only I did this differently, or if only this differently happened, then this wouldn't have happened. But instead we say, this is what Allah has had written for me, and alhamdulillah. Because we must understand that when we say Allah is our wakil, He is our guardian, we know that He, number one, has complete and utter control over our destiny. And number two, He is the all-knowing, the all-powerful, and He knows what is better for us far more than we could ever know. And so even if something happens which we perceive to be bad, we perceive to be not good for us, we take comfort in the fact that this is something that Allah has had written for us. And that even if it's difficult for us to see right now, if Allah has had it written for us, then there must be some good from it that we can get from this experience, from this consequence. And this, of course, takes some serious spiritual training, some serious tazkiyah, so to speak, in order to get to this level of tawakkul, this level of complete and utter trust. But this is what essentially it means to develop a strong belief, to have true tawakkul, to have true, complete, and utter trust in Allah. That not only do we put our trust in Allah for whatever happens, but in addition to that, if something happens that we perceive to be not ideal for us, we take comfort in the fact that it was Allah who has permitted this to happen, and if Allah has forbidden this to happen, then there is some good that we get out of it. We do not have regret over that consequence, but instead look into what good we can gain from that consequence due to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed it to happen. And again, this is something that does take time for us to develop this type of tawakkul, but this is, of course, the ideal. And this is essentially what it means to have tawakkul of Allah. And a particular dua that is something that every one of us should memorize, we had already memorized, which in my opinion, beautifully captures the essence of tawakkul, is the dua of tawakkalna ala Allah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Tawakkalna ala Allah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Which means that we have put our complete and utter trust in Allah, and there is no authority or power except for Allah. In this beautiful dua, we affirm our trust in Allah, as well as acknowledge that whatever comes our way, whatever type of event or incident comes our way, it can only happen through the power and authority of Allah. And since it's happening through the power and authority of Allah, there is something good for us to gain from it, even if it's something difficult for us to see at that time. This is a beautiful dua that inshallah ta'ala every single one of us should memorize. And a dua the Prophet ﷺ said that we should recite whenever we leave the home to start our day. Leave the home to do what we need to do for that day. So this is inshallah ta'ala something that we all should try and memorize. And inshallah ta'ala something we should all strive to actualize. This feeling of tawakkul, the feeling of complete trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah ta'ala, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for all of us to develop this sense of tawakkul upon Him. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with a beautiful Yom al-Jum'ah Friday this week, and inshallah ta'ala the coming Fridays through the rest of our lives. Allahumma subhanaka wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. جزاكم الله خيرا everyone. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.